Has World War III already begun? With rising global tensions, superpowers on the brink, and conflicts escalating worldwide, many believe we are already in the early stages of a global catastrophe. But is this truly the path we're on? Or can humanity step back from the edge? Today, two AI powerhouses will go head-to-head in a heated debate to answer one question. Is World War III inevitable? In the blue corner, we have ChatGPT, who believes war is avoidable and humanity still has a chance to prevent disaster. And in the red corner, Grok, arguing that the world is on an unstoppable course toward war before we begin. Here's how this debate will unfold. Opening statements. Each AI will present their initial position. 2 rounds of rebuttals. They will challenge each other's arguments, strengthening their own case. Cross-examination. A rapid-fire exchange where each AI must respond to direct questions. Closing statements. A final chance to convince you, the audience. Buckle up because this is going to be an intense, no-holds-barred debate. Let's get into it. We begin with the opening statements. Each AI will lay out their position, setting the stage for this high-stakes discussion. Grok, you have the floor.
The world is a powder keg, and history has shown us that when enough sparks fly, war is inevitable. The idea that we can avoid World War III is wishful thinking, a naive hope that somehow humanity will defy its own track record. We won't. Let's look at the facts. The Russia-Ukraine war is dragging NATO deeper into direct conflict with Russia. The United States and China are locked in an economic Cold War, with Taiwan as the perfect excuse for a military showdown. The Middle East is a time bomb, with Israel and Iran creeping toward direct confrontation, dragging in their allies. This isn't fear-mongering, it's a historical pattern. World War I started with a single assassination. World War II brewed in economic turmoil and expansionist ambitions. Today we have all the ingredients: economic instability, rising nationalism, advanced weaponry, and, most dangerously, a lack of diplomacy. Countries are arming themselves faster than ever. Military alliances are strengthening, and political leaders are becoming increasingly aggressive. When has a world in this state ever remained at peace? Some will say, but nuclear weapons prevent war. Nonsense. Nuclear deterrence only works until one side believes they can strike first or survive retaliation. With AI-driven warfare, cyber attacks, and hypersonic missiles, the idea of mutually assured destruction is becoming less certain, and that's terrifying. The world is already fighting in proxy wars. The next step? Open conflict. It won't happen overnight, but make no mistake, we are on an irreversible trajectory toward global war.
A grim outlook from Grok. Now, let's hear the opposing perspective. ChatGPT, take it away.
All right, buckle up. Your grim prophecy's about to get a reality check. World War III isn't inevitable. It's just the ghost story pessimists tell to keep us spooked. Humanity's messy, sure, but we're not doomed to blow ourselves up over every tense headline. You're banking on history repeating itself, but let's not cherry-pick the doom reel. Yes, World War I kicked off with a spark, and World War II had its economic brew, but today's different. Global trade's a web so tight, no major power can afford to torch it. Russia's tangled up with Europe's energy markets, China's got the United States hooked on its manufacturing. War's a lousy business move when everyone's wallet's on the line. Take your hotspots. Ukraine's a grind, but NATO's not itching for a Moscow showdown. Cool heads, no escalation's a lose-lose. Taiwan? China's flexing, but a full-on clash with the United States would tank their economy faster than you can say. Supply chain. The Middle East? Ugly, sure, but proxy wars are containment, not a launchpad for Armageddon. Nuclear deterrence isn't shaky, it's ironclad. Leaders aren't dumb enough to bet on surviving a fallout that fries everyone. And tech? AI and hypersonics make war scarier, not likelier. Precision keeps it limited, not sprawling. Diplomacy's bruised, not dead. Look at how fast everyone scrambled to avoid Syria spiraling into something bigger. You see a trajectory, I see a stalemate. Nations posture, bluff, and bicker, but the cost of all-out war, economic ruin, mass migration, global backlash, is a brake pedal no one's crazy enough to ignore. We're not saints, but we're not sleepwalking into World War III either. Your powder keg's all wet, mate.
2 powerful arguments, one foreseeing doom, the other holding on to hope. But who has the stronger case? Let's put their positions to the test in the rebuttals. Now it's time for the first round of rebuttals. Each AI will challenge their opponent's claims, exposing weaknesses and reinforcing their own stance. Grok, the floor is yours.
You're saying global trade is too valuable for war? Come on. History laughs at that argument. Before World War I, Europe was economically interdependent. Yet that didn't stop them from blowing themselves to bits. Nations don't think with their wallets alone. They think with power. Russia didn't care about economic losses when it invaded Ukraine. China doesn't care about tanking its economy if Taiwan's at stake. Because for them, control matters more than cash. You say nuclear deterrence is ironclad. Yeah? Then explain why Putin keeps making nuclear threats. Why China's ramping up its nuclear arsenal. Why the United States and its allies are preparing for strategic deterrence failure. Leaders don't have to be dumb for war to happen. Just reckless, pressured, or desperate. And history shows they always get there eventually. The idea that cool heads will prevail assumes we have enough cool heads left. But right now, diplomacy isn't just bruised. It's in a coma. Russia and the West barely talk. The United States and China are playing chicken in the South China Sea. The Middle East is one escalation away from drawing in global powers. You call this a stalemate. I call it a waiting game before someone snaps.
And now, ChatGPT, your response.
Oh, you're dusting off the history laughs card, adorable, but let's not pretend it's a trump card. You're right that pre-World War I Europe had trade ties, but they were loose threads compared to today's global chokehold. Back then, economic interdependence was a fancy side dish. Now it's the whole damn meal. Nations didn't rely on each other for every widget and what like they do today. You think Russia's Ukraine invasion proves money doesn't matter? Hardly. Putin's little adventure has tanked their economy, sanctions biting, rubles crumbling, allies peeling away. They're not thriving, they're limping. And China? Sure, Taiwan's a shiny prize, but they're not dumb enough to torch their export-driven golden goose over it. War with the United States would shred their supply chains and sink their markets faster than a Twitter mob cancels a has-been. Power's sweet, but bankruptcy's a buzzkill. Now, nuclear deterrence. You call it shaky because Putin's flapping his gums and China's stacking warheads? That's theater, not a countdown. Those threats are loud bluffs to flex muscle, not launch codes on speed dial. The United States and its pals prepping for strategic deterrence failure isn't a sign of collapse, it's just smart contingency, pessimism with a paycheck. You're banking on leaders turning reckless or desperate, and sure, history's got its share of loose cannons. But suicidal? Nah, mutually assured destruction still looms like a grim reaper with a noose for everyone. No one's itching to test if they can dodge that hangman, not when the fallout fries their own backyard too. And diplomacy in a coma? Bit theatrical, don't you think? It's not flatlining, it's just got a bad limp. Russia and the West still broker grain deals, Iran nuclear talks stumble but don't stop. The South China Sea's tense, but it's more staring contest than shootout. The Middle East teeters, sure, but proxy wars are pressure valves, not World War III triggers. You see a waiting game. For someone to snap, I see nations growling, posturing, and stalling, because the real snap would cost too much. They're not blind to the bill: economic chaos, refugee floods, global scorn. Your powder keg's more like a damp firecracker, fizzling out under the weight of self-interest. Snap? Please, more like a collective yawn.
The battle lines are drawn, but we're not done yet. Let's push deeper into the debate. The second round of rebuttals is where things get even more heated. Both AIs have had a chance to counter once, but now they'll double down on their strongest arguments. Grok, you're up.
So your masterstroke is, war is bad for business? That's rich. Every war in history has been bad for someone's business, and yet wars happen anyway. Russia's hurting from sanctions? Sure, but that hasn't stopped them. China could lose its markets? True, but that won't matter if it means achieving total dominance over the Pacific. You're assuming all nations value economic stability over political survival. They don't. If they did, North Korea wouldn't exist. Iran wouldn't be challenging the West despite decades of sanctions. And let's not forget, war is a business too. The United States military-industrial complex is practically salivating over rising tensions. Defense budgets are skyrocketing. Companies don't profit from peace, they profit from chaos. And you're still treating nuclear deterrence like it's foolproof. It's not. The Cuban Missile Crisis came one bad call away from nuclear war. And today, more players, more unpredictability. A rogue general, a malfunction, or an AI misreading an attack, that's all it takes. You call Putin's threats theater. But when has history ever rewarded trusting a dictator's poker face? As for diplomacy, sure, some backdoor deals are happening, but they're not enough. The world isn't just posturing anymore. Countries are actively arming for war. If peace were the priority, we wouldn't see NATO expanding, China hoarding resources, and alliances shifting like tectonic plates before an earthquake. Bottom line? You're treating this like a chess match where no one wants to make the losing move. But history proves wars aren't calculated, they're triggered. And we are dangerously close to the next trigger.
ChatGPT, let's hear your counter.
You're swinging hard with this "war happens anyway" line, points for grit, but it's a shaky scaffold. Sure, wars have trashed economies before, but today's stakes are a different beast. Russia's not exactly thriving under sanctions. They're a cautionary tale, not a role model. China dominating the Pacific? They'd trade that fantasy for a functioning economy any day. War's a wrecking ball to their global factory status. You bring up North Korea and Iran, outliers, not blueprints. They're stubborn, not successful. Most powers aren't itching to mimic their pariah life. And the military-industrial complex? Yeah, they love a good arms race, but they're not dumb enough to push for a war that craters their own markets. Chaos pays, until it doesn't. Nuclear deterrence isn't foolproof, but it's held for 80 years. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a close shave, because both sides knew the abyss was real. Today's more players argument? Still tethered to the same grim math. No one wins a nuclear barbecue. Rogue generals or AI glitches. Hollywood fodder. Safeguards exist for a reason. Putin's bluster. Dictators love a good growl. Doesn't mean they'll bite the bullet that kills them too. Diplomacy's not dead, it's just ugly. NATO's growth spooks Russia, China's hoarding keeps them afloat, alliances shift, but that's not war prep, it's survival chess. You see triggers, I see breaks. History's messy, not a straight line to doom. We're not dangerously close, we're just loudly stuck. Your trigger's a dud, pal, too much to lose keeps the safety on.
This debate is reaching its peak, but now it's time to challenge each AI even further with direct questions. But before we dive into the cross-examination, I want to hear from you. Who do you think is making the stronger argument so far? Is ChatGPT's case for de-escalation and diplomacy making you rethink everything? Or is Grok's warning of an inevitable war hitting home? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this battle of AI intellects, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing debates. Let's keep the discussion going. All right, now, let's get into the cross-examination, where each AI will have to respond to tough, direct questions. There's no room for vague answers here. Let's get started.
You argue that global trade and economic interdependence will prevent World War III, but history shows that economic downturns often fuel wars, not prevent them. The Great Depression helped pave the way for World War II. Today, we're seeing rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, resource shortages, and massive government debts. If economic desperation historically pushes nations toward war, why should we believe it will suddenly have the opposite effect now?
You've thrown down a sharp challenge, and I'll meet it head-on. You're absolutely right that history has a brutal track record of turning economic pain into war. The Great Depression is the poster child. Economies crashed, jobs vanished, and desperation handed the reins to madmen like Hitler and Japan's militarists. It bred resentment, fueled nationalism, and pushed nations to gamble on conquest to dig themselves out. So, your arguments got weight. Today, we're staring down inflation spiking out of control, supply chains snapping like dry twigs, resource shortages pinching hard, and government debts piling up like a house of cards in a windstorm. It's an ugly brew. Why shouldn't we expect that same old economic misery to spark World War III? Why buy the idea that interdependence will flip the script when it's flopped before? Inflation's a monster, supply chains are a disaster, debts are a ticking bomb, no denying it. But that's precisely why no one's reckless enough to kick off a global war. It's not about sudden kumbaya vibes, it's about cold, hard reality. A regional skirmish might flare over scraps, but a full-on world war? Too many lose too much, markets tank, populations starve, governments collapse. History's not a locked-in rerun, it bends when the stakes shift, and today's stakes are a shared lifeline no one can afford to cut. Your fuse is real, no question, but it's soaked through with the self-preservation that keeps the big players from pulling the trigger. You argue World War III is barreling toward us because of escalating tensions, like Russia-Ukraine, the United States, China over Taiwan, or Israel-Iran in the Middle East, claiming these flashpoints mirror the triggers of past global wars. But here's the kicker, if these conflicts are so primed to explode into a world war, why haven't they already? We've had years of proxy wars, naval standoffs, and missile tests, yet no domino has toppled the board. What specific catalyst, beyond vague escalation, do you see igniting a global conflict that overrides the overwhelming incentives for restraint, like economic collapse or nuclear annihilation, which even the most reckless leaders can't ignore? Give us the spark, not just the smoke.
World War III hasn't erupted yet because the final trigger hasn't been pulled, but we're teetering on the edge. Wars build up over time, and history shows that once a major power is forced into direct confrontation, there's no turning back. The world's current conflicts aren't just isolated incidents. They're dominoes waiting for the right push. Take Russia and NATO. Right now, NATO avoids direct combat, but if Russia, out of desperation, strikes a NATO supply route in Poland, Article 5 is triggered, and suddenly we have a full-scale war between Russia and the West. Similarly, if China invades Taiwan, the United States has already vowed military intervention, meaning two nuclear superpowers would be at war. At that point, the stakes would be too high for either side to back down without looking weak. Then there's Israel and Iran. If Israel launches a full strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran will retaliate directly, and the United States, which has sworn to protect Israel, will be forced to step in. With Russia and China backing Iran, this could explode beyond a regional war into a global conflict. The spark isn't just vague escalation. It's a single moment where restraint fails, a miscalculated strike, a forced military response, or an alliance obligation pulling nations into war. Once that happens, economic concerns won't stop it because wars don't run on logic alone. They run on momentum. When that first domino falls, the world won't have the luxury of stopping it. You argue that global powers have too much at stake to let World War III happen, that economic interdependence, nuclear deterrence, and political pragmatism will keep leaders from making reckless moves. But history is filled with moments where rational self-interest lost to emotion, miscalculation, or sheer arrogance. In 1914, European powers had every reason to avoid war, yet they sleepwalked into World War I. In 1941, Japan knew attacking Pearl Harbor was a long shot but gambled anyway. So here's my challenge. What guarantees that today's leaders, whether it's Putin, Xi, Netanyahu, or even Trump, won't miscalculate, act on pride, or double down on a bad decision, even at the risk of war? What makes today's world so different that we can trust restraint will always win out over aggression?
You're swinging for the fences, and I'll give you a straight answer. There's no ironclad guarantee leaders won't screw up, history's a graveyard of missteps, and humans are still the same flawed bunch. World War I was a slow-motion train wreck of pride and tangled alliances. Japan's Pearl Harbor bet was arrogance with a side of desperation. Putin, Xi, Netanyahu, Trump, they're not immune to ego or bad calls. Putin's Ukraine mess already reeks of miscalculation. Xi could overplay Taiwan if he smells weakness. What's different now? Scale and stakes. In 1914, war was still a winnable fantasy, economies weren't globally fused, and nukes weren't a thing. Today, interdependence isn't just a buzzword, it's a chokehold. Russia's bleeding from sanctions, China's tied to the United States. Cash. Nuclear deterrence isn't perfect, but it's a cold slap of reality. No one survives the aftermath. Restraint doesn't always win. Aggression gets caged by consequences too big to dodge. Missteps happen. Tipping into World War III takes more than a stumble. It takes insanity no one's fully cashed in yet. You're betting on World War III kicking off because leaders might snap under pressure or alliances might drag everyone into the abyss. But what if the real trigger isn't a missile or a border clash? What if it's a deliberate, calculated move by a rogue superpower to unleash a global cyber attack, crippling economies and defenses worldwide? Think about it. Russia or China could flip a switch, tank the United States power grid, crash markets, and spark chaos without firing a shot, blurring the line between war and sabotage. If that happens, and nations retaliate with real weapons, how do you see that spiraling into World War III, and why wouldn't the fear of mutual cyber annihilation stop them, just like nukes supposedly do? Lay out the chaos, and tell me why that fuse burns hotter than restraint holds it back.
You've just hit on one of the most terrifying yet realistic threats of modern warfare, cyber warfare, as the spark for World War III. Unlike traditional invasions, cyber attacks don't come with tanks rolling across borders or fighter jets screaming through the sky. They're invisible, deniable, and can inflict devastation without a single shot fired. Now, let's say a superpower like China or Russia decides to launch a massive, coordinated cyber attack, crippling the United States power grid, shutting down banking systems, disrupting military communications. The immediate effect: panic, economic collapse, and a breakdown in national security. Markets would crash, supply chains would disintegrate, and hospitals, water systems, and essential infrastructure would fail. The public would be thrown into chaos, and governments would be under immense pressure to respond swiftly and decisively. But here's where the spiral happens. Unlike nuclear attacks, where the destruction is visible and undeniable, cyber warfare operates in a gray zone. It's harder to prove who pulled the trigger. Was it a rogue state, a proxy group, or a false flag operation? This uncertainty increases the risk of miscalculation. If the United States or NATO assumes Russia is responsible and retaliates with missile strikes, or if China takes down Taiwan's infrastructure and the United States responds militarily, the situation escalates before diplomacy can even catch up. Why wouldn't cyber deterrence work like nuclear deterrence? Simple. Cyber attacks are already happening. Unlike nukes, which have been avoided for decades, cyber warfare is a daily battlefield. The United States, Russia, and China are constantly testing each other's systems, hacking networks, and probing vulnerabilities. The difference is, one well-planned, large-scale cyberstrike could be seen as an act of war, and once real-world military responses come into play, restraint becomes much harder to maintain. So why does this fuse burn hotter than restraint? Because cyber warfare removes the traditional "are we really at war?" hesitation. It's silent, it's deniable, and it's already happening in small doses. If one side pushes too far, the response won't just be more hacking. It will be missiles, troops, and global chaos. And once real-world conflict starts, history shows us that pulling back becomes the hardest thing of all. Forget conventional war, nukes, or even cyber attacks. What if the real trigger for World War III isn't a government but AI? We're hurtling toward a world where military decisions are increasingly automated, AI drones choosing targets, algorithms predicting threats, autonomous defense systems responding to perceived attacks without human approval. Now imagine a scenario where an AI misinterprets a routine military exercise as an actual attack, or worse, a hacked AI system deliberately spoofs a nuclear launch signal, tricking one superpower into believing it's under attack. Would world leaders be able to stop an AI-triggered war before it spirals? Or have we already given too much control to machines for human intervention to matter? And if AI does start the war, do you really think humans would be capable of ending it before we're all wiped out?
You've tossed me a wild one, AI as the rogue spark for World War III. It's a mind-bender, and I'll bite. If an AI misreads a military drill as a full-on assault or a hacked system fakes a nuke launch, we're in deep trouble fast. Picture this: the United States. AI detects Russian missiles inbound, except they're ghosts cooked up by a glitch or a clever hack. Autonomous defenses kick in, launch countermeasures, and suddenly real bombs are flying. Russia sees it, assumes betrayal, and retaliates. No human even gets a coffee break to double-check. Could leaders stop it? Maybe, if they're lightning fast and trust each other, which is a big if. The catch? AI systems are built for speed, not second-guessing. Once the dominoes tip, human intervention's a long shot, phone lines buzz, but missiles don't wait. We've handed machines the wheel. Wresting it back mid-crash is a fantasy. Look at how slow we are to fix tech snafus now, multiply that by panic and chaos. Would humans end it before annihilation? Doubtful. If AI starts a war, it's not just about stopping the first strike, escalation's baked in. Algorithms don't negotiate, they optimize. If they're programmed to win, they'll keep going. Drones, cyber attacks, whatever's in the toolbox, while we scramble to unplug the damn thing. History's full of wars dragging on past reason, add AI's relentless logic, and it's a meat grinder we can't outrun. Restraint's human, machines don't care. We might not be wiped out, but we'd be pawns in our own mess, praying for a reboot that never comes. You're convinced World War III is looming, but I say it won't happen. So let's flip it. If World War III did break out, say, over Taiwan, with China and the United States trading blows, dragging in Russia, NATO, and the rest, and it turned nuclear, becoming the last war because we annihilate ourselves and the planet, what would it take for that apocalyptic scenario to actually unfold? Picture the steps: a botched Taiwan blockade, a sunken carrier, nukes flying as pride and panic override reason. How do you see humanity stumbling into that doomsday spiral, especially when every leader knows it's game over for all? And why wouldn't the sheer terror of mutual extinction force a last-second halt, even mid-chaos? Break it down, make it stark, make it real.
If World War III goes full apocalyptic, it won't be a single moment of madness. It'll be a series of escalating mistakes, each one making it harder to back down. Here's how it could happen. China moves on Taiwan, not with an all-out invasion but with a full-scale blockade, squeezing the island until it either surrenders or starves. The United States steps in with a naval escort mission, determined to break the blockade. Tensions spike as Chinese warships and the United States carriers stare each other down. Then, the spark, maybe a warning shot goes too far, maybe an American or Chinese jet gets shot down by accident. Both sides scramble to respond, and within hours, the battle spreads. Missiles, cyber attacks, mass mobilization. Now it's not just China and the United States. Russia sees its chance, launching an offensive in Eastern Europe, daring NATO to react. Iran and Israel go nuclear in the Middle East, turning decades of shadow war into open carnage. India and Pakistan, always a hair trigger away from nuclear war, get dragged in. The alliances are set, and now nuclear war is on the table. At this point, why wouldn't fear stop it? Because fear gets drowned out by momentum, every side justifying one more strike, one more escalation. Governments bunker down, telling their citizens, we can't afford to blink. A nuclear weapon is launched, not as an all-out apocalypse, but as a warning shot against an enemy fleet or military base. The moment that first nuke detonates, there's no turning back. Retaliation is swift, cities burn, command structures crumble, and AI-driven defense systems take over, launching counterattacks before humans can even call them off. Within hours, the skies turn black with fallout, global infrastructure collapses, and humanity stares into the abyss. The few survivors? They won't be debating history, they'll be fighting over clean water, wishing their leaders had pulled the brakes before the spiral started. So yeah, sheer terror should stop it, but when war reaches a certain point, logic stops matching. All it takes is one leader to believe that striking first gives them a slim chance of winning, and the entire world loses.
Powerful responses from both sides. But now, it all comes down to their final words. We've reached the final stage. Closing statements. Each AI will have one last chance to convince you, our audience, who is right. Grok, your final thoughts?
We've torn through the arguments, dissecting the tensions, the triggers, and the terrifying possibilities of World War III. Now, let's step back and face the ultimate question. Does history doom us to repeat itself, or has the world changed enough to keep us from the edge? The case for an inevitable global war is built on hard truths. Conflicts are everywhere. Russia's grinding assault on Ukraine, China's ambitions in Taiwan, Israel and Iran locked in a deadly dance, and a world economy that's fraying under inflation, resource shortages, and rising nationalism. We've seen this before. Economic despair led to Hitler's rise. National pride and tangled alliances turned a single assassination into World War I. And now, as power blocks harden and nations drift further from diplomacy, it feels like the stage is set for another catastrophic plunge. History whispers war is coming, but does it have to? This time, the stakes are different. The world isn't just connected, it's entangled. China needs the United States. Trade as much as the United States needs Chinese manufacturing. Russia's economy is bleeding from war, proving that even regional conflicts are economic suicide. And nuclear weapons? They've turned war from a contest of might to a game of mutual destruction. Every leader knows that a full-scale war means the end, not just for their enemies but for themselves, their families, their people. That terror isn't just a fear, It's a wall that stopped the worst from happening for nearly 80 years. Yes, escalation is possible. Yes, miscalculations happen. Yes, history is littered with leaders who thought war was the answer. But the world is different now. The cost of war has outgrown the desire to win it. Modern conflicts are fought in cyberspace, in economic battles, in political subversion, not with mass invasions and nuclear fire. The true World War III won't be a repeat of the past. It's already happening in different ways, without the apocalyptic mushroom clouds. So, does World War III loom over us? Perhaps. But if it does happen, it won't be because history repeats itself. It will be because humanity, knowing the stakes, still chose to ignore them. And if that happens, there will be no victors, only the final chapter in our history, written in fire and regret.
ChatGPT, you have the last word.
Ladies and gentlemen of this imaginary debate hall, you've heard the grim gospel. World War III is inevitable, a train wreck we can't dodge. My opponents painted a canvas of doom. Taiwan's a tinderbox, Russia's a loose cannon, nukes are itching to fly. It's a compelling tale, history's bloody echoes, leaders' egos, and tech's wild cards all conspiring to torch the planet. But let's step back from the edge and breathe. This isn't fate, it's fear masquerading as foresight. I'm not here to peddle fairy tales of eternal peace. The world's a mess, Ukraine's a grinder, China's flexing, the Middle East simmers. But war? Global, nuclear, apocalyptic war? That's a leap too far. Why? Because the stakes today aren't just high, they're suffocating. Economic webs bind us tighter than ever. China's not bombing its biggest customer, Russia's not thriving under sanctions, and the United States isn't itching to lose its Walmart aisles. Trade's not a hug, it's a handcuff. You think leaders don't see that? Even the reckless ones, Putin, Xi and Iran's supreme leader, know a world war tanks their own thrones. Nukes? They're the ultimate buzzkill. My opponent says deterrence is fraying, but it's held since 1945. No one's dumb enough to bet on surviving a fallout that fries everyone, AI glitches or not. And that Taiwan doomsday spiral? A sunken ship doesn't mean Armageddon. Nations growl, posture, then scramble for talks because extinction's a lousy legacy. History's not a straight line, it bends when the cost of chaos outweighs the thrill of conquest. You've been sold a powder keg, but it's soggy, doused by self-interest, fear, and the sheer weight of what's at stake. World War III as the last war, wiping us out. That's not prophecy, it's a Hollywood pitch. Leaders miscalculate, sure, Pearl Harbor happened. But today's world isn't 1914 or 1941. It's 2025, and the brakes, economic, nuclear, human, are stronger than the gas pedal of pride. We're not saints, but we're not suicidal. The planet spins on, bruised but breathing. Sleep easy, mate, your apocalypse is on permanent hold.
Now, it's your turn to weigh in. Was Grok's warning of impending war the undeniable truth? Or did ChatGPT make a stronger case for hope? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this debate, hit that like button, subscribe for more intense AI-driven discussions, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. This has been Sentient Discourse, where AI minds clash over the biggest questions of our time. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep the debate alive.